guy in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
When you have a government-controlled marketplace, you don't have the real function of the market, which is private decisions that are decentralized, local, down at the family level, down to the individual level. Those decisions all working harmoniously together, all independently of each other, of course, bringing to the market the best product, the best service at the lowest price. That is what the marketplace does when it's unfettered, when it is allowed to be free, when you have a free market. When you have the alternative, which is largely in view today here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County, the alternative is a state-controlled market. You have a kind of a substitute for that real marketplace where buying and selling, private decisions, people seeking their own interest and also seeking the interest of their customers personally, right? If you're the small businessman, you run your business to personally serve your customers. And as you get bigger, it's more institutional, and you have more customers and more people on your side to help deliver good services to those people. So in the marketplace, there is an eye to the customer, an eye to service, to keeping costs down, and to maximizing the amount of money coming in for your business so you can serve yet more customers with what you have to offer. And on the other side, the customer, he shops based on price, quality, the personal connection he may have with the business, and his own interest. And that's where you have the most efficiencies, the best results, whether it's in medical services, whether it's in educational services. When you have a school cartel, as we do in Hamilton County, a state chartered cartel that serves families ostensibly, you don't have that. You don't have really a good product, and you have instead presentations such as those of Superintendent Brian Johnson at yet another community get-together with families and others, and of course people who are favor seekers. They're always attaching themselves to school officials, job seekers, favor seekers, contract bidders, and the like. They're all kind of in view here when there's a public appearance. Dr. Johnson, he's a young man new in Chattanooga, is making the best show that he can. And he's making, as the story shares in this effort, of course, the story in the Times Free Press is part of the marketing program. Just the way it's told, the way the story presents what he had to say, is about giving the best service at the lowest price effectively. But that's not what's offered, but rather assurances and a sense of unity. We have Chattanooga, we have our schools. And so we are going to get some of these schools off the bottom of the floor, that they're there, and we all agree that they're there. And yes, there are the worst schools in the state are in Chattanooga, and we just have to accept that. We have to work really hard. And the way the story, the style of this narrative, and also some of the things that Dr. Johnson said, my little brief analysis here about how when you don't have a real market, you have an artificial presentation of the factors that make things better. Okay, in a real market, is private decisions make things better. There's no subsidy for anybody. No one has a subvention to their efforts, either as consumer or as provider. And people come and go. Right, if the market doesn't serve them, a provider doesn't serve them, they go elsewhere. Those families go elsewhere. They're in charge, after all, of the decisions they make on educational services for their children. But here, we don't have that in play. That's not in view, so we have something instead. And the coverage, as it is in all establishment coverage, is this way. It cannot be avoided. It's nothing to harp about. It's nothing really to complain about. It's just the way it is. This coverage shares in the premise that the schools have a good man on top, and he's going to be trying hard, and we need to support him. That is sort of the idea that you get in reading this morning's newspaper. And hearing about Dr. Johnson. He says, we want to have a world-class school system. And that's good. We want every student to have an opportunity to be successful. We have a goal to be the fastest improving school district in the state of Tennessee. And he plans to chase aggressively on improving communication with parents and engaging the community, the story says. He wants to get information out into people's hands, so that they'll know exactly what's happening. Of course, that means that they will continue with their consent. That's what's really happening. If you know what's happening, You will continue to give your passive consent as a parent. A taxpayer, half of your school, half of your tax for county and city government go to schools, right? Don't look a 50% tax cut in the eye and say we're done with public schools. No, just don't look that way. Just look over here. Look here at what I'm saying. I have good things to say. We're going to aggressively improve communication so that you will know what's going on. You see what's happening? You don't have to really look at what's happening, but look at what's happening, right? Look at what we say is happening. Our board will hold us accountable. You see, here we have what we don't have is a market authority. There's no authority, but we have the board. The board will hold us responsible, hold us accountable, and we'll report to them on how we are performing in those areas, he said. We want you to know how we are performing. So again, rather than the market function of free choice and free trade and free markets, we have a board, and we have this show of the hireling going to be responsible to the board, who's the supervisor, who's going to make sure it's going to work out. The board is there to make sure that the state rules are followed and that every child becomes a wanted child, and every child has a world-class education promised to him, and it will be delivered. We're going to start tomorrow making deliveries. Johnson notes that not every target may be met, quote, but we're going to stretch ourselves. And when we don't meet our targets, we're going to talk about the plan we have to move to the next level. Well, okay, so you've got these next levels, right? And there's always progress to be made. In the free market, there is no level, okay? The level, it's always the highest level. It's always operating at the highest level. You don't have, but when you look at things administratively and bureaucratically, as von Mises describes in his 1941 very slim volume called Bureaucracy. The standards are policy goals, right? They're not the market. They're not real service. They're meeting goals written by bureaucrats who've gotten their goals from statute, right? There's a statute that says certain things, and so you create a whole policy. You create a whole stream of words based on that statute that effectuate, as they might say, they effectuate to bring about the good end in the policy. You don't have a marketplace to bring about these improvements. But you have these improvements that are steps ahead. And in a marketplace, the market, because it is free in the free market, it is always the most efficient. The most efficient is always there in front of you. And you have let's say you have 4 choices on a service. One of them really is the best one, and the others are pretty close, right? So it's up to you to decide the one that does over long term in the free market. The best provider does get more market share over time. And the lesser ones, they have to either improve their gig or come up with something better than the best one. And because they're competing, you always have the best in front of you. Even though there are always laggards, the marketplace always has laggards in it. But you, rationally, as the buyer, the consumer, you decide, and you go with someone for a while and wait for a better offer to come along. And so you improve the market, you subsidize by your business the better one, and you discourage by not buying from the lesser one, and he either goes out of business or improves what he has to offer, or makes amends. He makes amends. He comes up with some better plan. That's the free market, and that's what we don't have in the public school sector. Johnson said his plan to bring equity to the school's district involves providing every student with opportunities for success. There you go. These are words that if you hear them, you're the dad, right? You're the customer, the pretended customer. And you think, well, yeah, opportunities for success. That's what my county school system is giving. Leaders need to look at what programs are being offered, the story says, and how they are being implemented, as well as appealing to students' interests. He said, when you start getting to the heart of students' interests, quoting Dr. Johnson, students start to come to school. Students start to make good grades. It's about finding where their interests are and how we can give them access to their interests. So you see what's happening is the school is always self-centered. It's omphalos-centric. Omphalocentrism is looking at your omphalos, which is your navel, right? It's navel gazing. It's always about us. The curriculum of school is school, right? It's not math, science, civics, history, the arts. It's not rhetoric. It is itself. That is the main curriculum of school, according to one noted longtime public school teacher, one of my favorite writers, John Taylor Gatto. You get to the heart of students' interests. Well, clearly, bureaucracy can't do that, right? By definition, a gigantic system with 43,000 customers in one administration can't do that. By definition, it can't do that. And of course, you accept that. You, my listener, accept that because you want there to be one central administration. because in a centralized system, there are efficiencies, right? There are efficiencies of scale. But remember, schools are not making plastic products that break after 6 or 7 weeks. They're supposedly creating the character and knowledge base of children who are the inmates of that school. We need to have, over time, we need to have our bearings. We need to get our bearings, and not just believe that if you shake enough words out, that the people that they'll be still, right? That's what this story is about. The words of the doctor and the narrative itself are shaking words out so that you, my listener, will be still. Not that the thing is, you're not supposed to do anything. You're not supposed to do anything. Don't do something. Just sit there. That's the rule of this coverage and the pitch for the public system. You're already paying for it, so why not take advantage of it? You have to pay for it. So you're foolish not to take advantage of it. That's the argument. The gun is at your head here. Enjoy our restaurant. You're walking in Paris, and amid the terror threat, right? and a cafe owner is standing by the little balustrade there on the sidewalk. He pulls out a Luger that his grandfather captured from a German after the war, puts it at your head and say, "Come in and enjoy my coffee." And you say, "Well, okay." And of course, he's taking your money. He's taking 200 franc note from you. And so you're going to go in there and sit down and enjoy your coffee and watch the scenery on the river Seine with the Eiffel Tower glinting in the background in the evening sun. And that's kind of what's happening here. We've been convinced that we have to take advantage of this system. Well, this is David Tulis, and we are here at AM 1240 and FM 92.7, where we cover local economy and the free market. There's a delightful bit of bathroom reading that I'm doing. Sometimes we have at my house a wonderful family library. My wife Jeanette's a bibliophile, and we have all the Edwin Tunis books. I was reading in Frontier Living, written and illustrated by Edwin Tunis, a wonderful discussion about how the frontiersmen made their way. And I want to suggest to you that here in local economy in Chattanooga, we have rough types, and there are better ones who are coming. And there's a plumbing company in Chattanooga that is working on improving its people. Tunis mentions Dr. Benjamin Rush, who was one of the signers of the Constitution, and he had three categories of pioneer. The first category, a very rough person, he was the hunter, the true pioneer, the breaker of the woods. He was a shiftless drunkard with the manners of an Indian, and he would throw up a shelter, cut a little patch of ground, and put his own corn in. He had a couple of scrawny nags and a cow. And the second lot of pioneer out west, or not out west, but in the east, was as the colonies were expanding westward. This man's a farmer, but not a very good one. He's a loafer. He's a drunk, and he had a better cabin, and he had some wheat and rye in addition to corn. And his fences are weak, and wild animals break into them. Horses had too little food to enable them to work properly, and his cattle sometimes starved to death in the spring, waiting for the grass to grow. And then he would clear his land, but then he had to sell out because he had debts he couldn't pay. And the third man now is the kind we want to have here in local economy, the kind that you want to have working for you in your business. He might be a buyer of the second man's farm because he had enough money to pay for himself with good animals and proper farm tools. And he had a better barn, and the warm animals, they worked better, kept warm. They had plenty of oats and buckwheat. And he added crops, oats and buckwheat that he served for his animals, forage, peas to his crops, and he planted a vegetable garden to supply his table. And his descendants may still be living on the land today. Something like this succession repeated itself over and over again in the frontier. The first ones, now here's the praise for the drunkard and the lout, the first man. He was part of a crude foundation, Tunis says, that as the settlements went westward. The first two groups fought off the Indians, cleared the rough patches. Such men and their hard-bitten, long-suffering women were the cutting edge, he says, of civilization. They were almost savages, but their improvidence, right? The fact that they took to drink, their improvidence and their lack of graces should be balanced against the hardships of the lives they had to lead. I was doing business yesterday, as I do David Tulis here at Nooga Radio, and I came across a company that has finally put some of its rules in writing. All employees are to be polite, respectful, and keep calm demeanor when talking to customers. even if that customer is very rude and disrespectful. As professionals, we have to remain calm and courteous. Not having a bad attitude or cursing will not be tolerated. No smoking on job sites. And as I was mentioning to Stephanie yesterday, this is very important. A man who's got a customer can never be angry at the customer, ever, even if that customer is rude, boorish, demanding things that are not really right, claiming things that were broken that weren't even touched by the repair crew. Right? The customer is never to be angry. To be made angry and never see your anger. In this 4-page employee handbook, the people who work in this business are told you got to have a clean shirt. If you need more shirts, please get with management. If you have a consistent problem with keeping clean shirts, you may be charged for replacements. And there's very important in that business are invoices, what exactly is done, the work logs which say where the man has been, and then there's this I think is just delightful. Again, raising the quality of the pioneer, right? We want to have better people working in our businesses to serve you, my customer, here in Chattanooga and Helena County. All employees to make sure that the vehicle that they are assigned to is neat and organized, okay? It's getting better. You should not have to hunt for parts once on the job, nor should you have parts falling out when the doors are opened. All vehicles should stay clean inside and out. This goes back to the above-mentioned perception of the customer is how professional this company appears on its arrival. You want to have the best people, no cursing, no smoking on the job, and so there is an idea of elevating who we rep ourselves, and here that they're going to be written down. And the reason these are written down, and that all the people in this company, local company, they had to read this, they had to sign it, and then the manager signed as well. That we understand what the rules are. You're not coming to the job with a filthy shirt. Now, maybe at the end of a day, you've been to 4 or 5 jobs, and the last job, the matron there at the door, and deciding whether to invite you in or not, she says, "You have a torn shirt, and you're greasy. You got grease on your knees, and you've got some spots on your back of your hands, and your hand washing was not very effectual." And there you are. That may pass. Okay, that may pass, but ideally, they're 2 sets of clothes. One for meeting the customer and one for getting the job done, and we esteem the customer. We don't want to offend the customer. We don't want the customer to smell the drift of Marlboros from around the corner of the house where you're looking at a pipe. We want to have the best people, and it's really these things are important because it's really hard to find folks today who work hard. And as I do sales calls, David Tulis, your host here, Bowtie. Right, as Bowtie does business, I'm hearing a lot about that. We have almost no unemployment officially, and yet finding people who really care, who really work hard is difficult. Where are they? Where are these people who work hard? Just by the way, I'm looking for a salesman, and if you my listener are interested in working with me, do call me. Do contact me here at the radio station. We love interacting with small business, and we have, just by the way, here at Nooga Radio, just a great platform for small business. There's a lot eating into our prosperity. We're trying to elevate our prosperity. We want to be the third wave of frontiersmen. Okay, we don't want to be the first one. We want to be in that third wave, where the land that we have here is lived upon 2 generations out by our kin, right? Our descendants. We want that to be. There are things working against us in Chattanooga and Helena County, in local economy, making our local economy poor. These, I think, in some respects, are going to be overwhelming. And we can touch on the coming debacle by mentioning just the inflation figures. There's a story by John Malden picked up by Gary North, and the remarkable thing is that the high-end economists at a Chatham House event, an event where you can't say anything about who's there, they're arguing that the Fed should have a 4% inflation rate. Well, we have officially about a 2.2% CPI inflation rate. That's measuring the devaluation of the dollar in terms of retail goods. And that if it's 2%, Malden points out, you have after 36 years, you've lost 50% of the buying power of the dollars you save today. So if you save the dollar today, and hold on to it, you lose 50% of your buying power in 36 years. But if it goes up to 4%, in a twisted logic that no official economist condemns, right? Nobody at this event condemned it, Malden indicates. No one spoke up for the little guy. That's you. No one spoke up for you. Well, your loss in 18 years is going to be 50%. Your 50% loss at 4% inflation, that some of these turkeys accept that there'll be a rate that high. Your loss of buying power, you might say theft. Okay, this is kind of theft by the good people against you. 50% loss. Not in 36 years, but in 18 years. That's how short a time it will take for that dollar that you save today will be emaciated, made thin and reedy and weak. Scrofulous, the scrofulous dollar, and you're the victim. We here in Chattanooga need to work on local economy and getting around these awful problems. David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports